The CEO of the most valuable company on earth is stepping down. Amazon is dropping $25 billion to power AI models. And Meta is secretly recording its own employees' mouse clicks to build the AI that will replace them. Welcome to AI Unraveled. I am Etienne Newman, software engineer from Université Laval, based in Calgary, Alberta. Today, we perform a forensic autopsy on the massive shift in corporate leadership and human labor crashing into the tech sector this Tuesday, April 21st, 2026. We begin with the end of an era. Apple CEO Tim Cook is officially stepping down this September. Since 2011, Cook transformed Apple from a $350 billion company into a $4 trillion behemoth. But as the world becomes obsessed with AI, Apple has chosen John Ternus, the ultimate hardware guy, as its new CEO. Is Apple surrendering the AI software war to Google's Gemini, or are they pivoting to an entirely new hardware paradigm? Meanwhile, the agentic war is burning cash at an unprecedented rate. Amazon just committed an additional $25 billion to Anthropic to secure 5 gigawatts of compute capacity. The demand for autonomous agents is so severe that GitHub has actually halted new signups for Copilot because the compute costs are simply unsustainable. But what does this mean for human workers? A new Tufts University study predicts a devastating $25.6 billion in lost wages across Massachusetts alone over the next 5 years, equating to 260,000 lost jobs. And if you think you are safe at a tech giant, think again. Meta is now actively installing software to track its US employees' keystrokes to train the exact autonomous agents that will take over their tasks. Before we dive into the data, a quick reminder. Subscribe to AI Unraveled on Apple Podcasts to enjoy this briefing completely ads-free. Today's episode is brought to you by Area and Jamgamind. When trillion-dollar giants are burning capital on autonomous agents and installing surveillance software on employee laptops, your enterprise needs flawless technical intelligence and zero-trust security. Jamgamind delivers the human-verified audio forensics the C-suite relies on, while Area locks down your AI infrastructure to ensure your proprietary data never leaks. Let's unravel the cost of autonomy.
Imagine logging into your workstation tomorrow morning, right? And you discover that your company just authorized a $2 million software deployment.
Which is a pretty massive IT budget on its own.
Oh, massive. But it has one specific purpose: to record the exact pixel coordinates of your mouse cursor, like 40 times a second, all day long.
Yeah, every single click.
Every click. And not to see if you're working. It's not a productivity tracker. It's to build a mathematical model of your brain so a machine can literally do your job by the end of the fiscal year.
It sounds incredibly dystopian.
It sounds like science fiction. But today, we actually have a leak from Meta that proves this isn't sci-fi at all. It is the new corporate playbook.
It really is.
So if you are listening to this right now, you are probably exhausted by the daily wall of AI hype. I mean, we all are. You want to look under the hood. So today we're doing a holistic macroeconomic autopsy on what the tech sector is calling the agentic shift.
And it's a completely necessary autopsy, I think, because the utopian marketing brochures, they completely ignore the underlying physics of cloud infrastructure.
Right.
We have a fascinating stack of sources to go through today. We're looking at internal tech industry memos, some really fresh financial reports from Amazon and Apple, that highly sensitive Reuters leak regarding Meta that you mentioned, and an incredibly detailed economic study out of the Boston Globe.
And when you put them all together, a very clear, highly cynical picture emerges about the actual cost of running autonomous systems.
Exactly.
So the mission for today's deep dive is to map out this theme we're calling the cost of autonomy. Because, getting an AI to write a poem or summarize an email is a neat trick.
Yeah, that's table stakes now.
Right. But getting an AI to autonomously manage your entire marketing pipeline, that is a massive global economic lever being pulled.
And the thesis here is that the tech industry has abruptly collided with a mathematical reality over the last quarter.
A very expensive mathematical reality.
Right. Running autonomous AI-like, having software agents operating in the background, reasoning through complex workflows without a human intervening, it requires a volume of computing power that is actively breaking the financial models of the biggest companies on Earth. So to offset the billions being poured into raw compute, corporations are aggressively accelerating the replacement of their own white-collar workforce.
Okay, let's unpack this because we need to start right at the physical bottom of this issue, which is the data centers.
The hardware.
Yes, the hardware. To understand why human jobs are actively on the chopping block, we really have to look at the raw infrastructure cost. I was reviewing the Amazon financial filings in our sources, and there's a figure here that just defies traditional software economics.
It's staggering.
It really is. Amazon has agreed to invest up to $25 billion into Anthropic, and that is on top of a previous $8 billion investment.
Yeah, and we need to look at what that capital is actually purchasing, right?
Yeah.
Amazon is securing 5 gigawatts of compute capacity, specifically dedicated to running Claude models.
5 gigawatts. Let's just pause there. For you listening, we aren't talking about standard server racks in a nice air-conditioned room anymore.
No, not at all.
5 gigawatts is the energy output of multiple nuclear power plants, dedicated entirely to letting an AI process natural language and write code.
The scale of power consumption is just completely unprecedented. But there is a structural reason for it. Anthropic, in turn, is committing to spend over $100 billion on Amazon Web Services over the next decade.
Just to keep those specific servers running.
Exactly. The foundational labs and the hyperscalers are essentially locked in this massive vendor financing loop.
It's like burning billions in a furnace just to keep the lights on.
That's a perfect way to put it. The physical reality of agentic AI is that it pushes even a trillion-dollar company to its absolute limits.
Wait, hold on, though. I need to understand the mechanics here. Because I know what inference cost means when I ask ChatGPT to write an email, right? It costs like a fraction of a cent.
Right, it's microscopic.
So why is an agent suddenly requiring $100 billion in server time?
Well, it comes down to the architecture of autonomy. When you ask a standard AI to write an email, it generates text exactly once. That's a single inference event.
Okay.
But an autonomous agent doesn't work like that at all. It uses reasoning loops. So if you ask an agent to, say, audit a database and fix errors, the agent has to prompt itself. It writes a script, tests the script, analyzes the error output, rewrites the script, and then verifies the database.
Oh, wow. So it's talking to itself.
Constantly.
Right.
One user request might trigger hundreds or even thousands of hidden inference calls in the background. The AI is constantly thinking, and that continuous loop multiplies the compute cost exponentially.
Okay, so if the infrastructure cost is scaling that aggressively for giants like Amazon and Anthropic, how can standard software platforms absorb that? I mean, they can't all drop $25 billion just to secure server space.
They absolutely cannot. And the clearest signal of this structural anomaly is happening right now over at GitHub.
Right, the coding platform.
Yeah, GitHub is the backbone of modern software development. And remember, they are backed by Microsoft.
Microsoft, the very company that essentially ignited this whole generative AI race.
Exactly. Yet, according to our sources, GitHub is actively halting new signups for their Copilot Pro, Pro Plus R, and student plans.
Wait, really? Microsoft is just locking the doors to new paying customers?
They have absolutely no choice. The documentation shows that the inference costs of these multi-step agentic workflows are financially unsustainable at scale.
Wow.
Yeah, GitHub is aggressively throttling usage. They've imposed strict session caps, weekly token ceilings, and they are completely removing access to top-tier reasoning models like Claude Opus 4.5 and 4.6 for standard users.
Just ripping them out of the platform.
Because the models are simply too capable. They run too many background loops, and therefore they cost too much to maintain on a basic subscription basis.
And honestly, when tech giants are burning $25 billion just to secure server capacity, and GitHub is halting signups due to astronomical costs, relying on hype to plan your IT budget is financial suicide. Jamgamine provides the human-verified, technical-grade audio forensics required to deploy AI effectively and profitably. Visit djamgamemind.com.
It's crucial.
It is. Stop collecting shiny beta apps and start deploying actual infrastructure. Head over to djampam.com/toolkit for the AI Executive Toolkit.
You know, that transition you just mentioned, moving from relying on cloud hype to managing actual infrastructure constraints, that is exactly what we are seeing play out at the absolute highest levels of the consumer market.
You're talking about Apple.
I am. Look at the largest company in human history.
Right. The leadership shift happening there is a massive data point in our sources. According to the internal announcements, Tim Cook is stepping down as CEO on September 1st, 2026.
He's transitioning to executive chairman.
Yes. And, Cook took Apple from a $350 billion market cap in 2011 to $4 trillion. He built an absolute operational juggernaut. But his successor is what I find really fascinating, John Ternus.
Right. What's fascinating here is that Ternus is a deeply traditional choice, but it's incredibly revealing. He is 50 years old, a 25-year Apple veteran, and the current senior vice president of hardware engineering.
Hardware, not software.
Exactly.
Right.
He shaped the physical architecture of the iPhone, the iPad, the MacBook Neo.
So he is a pure hardware engineer taking over at the exact moment the rest of Silicon Valley is obsessing over cloud software and foundational AI models.
And that is the macroeconomic signal right there. By elevating a hardware executive while companies like Microsoft and Meta are bleeding capital to build AI data centers, Apple is making a deliberate strategic retreat.
They're tapping out.
Basically, they are looking at the $100 billion compute bills we just discussed, and they are choosing not to play that game. They are outsourcing Siri's core reasoning engine to Google Gemini. They are protecting their historical profit margins rather than incinerating capital in the foundational AI lab wars.
See, I know analysts are calling it a retreat or like surrendering the race to Google and Anthropic, but I actually think there is a misinterpretation happening there.
How so?
Well, if you dig into the retail data in our sources, there is a fascinating hardware anomaly right now. Currently, Mac Minis and Mac Studios are completely backordered until the fall.
Oh yeah, the spike in desktop sales is very real.
It is. But why are they spiking? Because AI developers and enterprise IT departments are buying up top-tier Apple hardware to run their open-source agents locally.
In a closed box.
Well, exactly. They want their AI running in a private, safe environment on their own desk, avoiding those massive cloud token fees. It's like, is Apple surrendering the gold rush or just realizing it's way more profitable to sell the pickaxes and the buckets?
That's a great analogy. You're really pointing to Apple's unified memory architecture, which is a critical technical advantage.
Break that down a bit for the listener.
Sure. So, standard PCs separate standard RAM from the graphics processing unit's VRAM. But large AI models require massive amounts of VRAM to function, which means buying incredibly expensive NVIDIA cards.
Right.
Apple Silicon, however, combines the memory pool. So you can buy a Mac Studio with 192 gigabytes of unified memory and load a massive AI model entirely locally.
Something a standard enterprise PC just cannot do without a massive server rack.
Precisely. Apple is letting Amazon and Anthropic bankrupt each other in the cloud, while they sell the high-margin hardware required to process AI on the edge.
Which isolates Apple safely, sure, but it raises a deeply uncomfortable question for every other enterprise company out there.
Yeah, it does.
If you don't have high-margin hardware to sell, and you are being forced to pay these spiraling AI subscription fees to Microsoft or Amazon just to stay competitive, where does the budget come from?
This is where it gets dark. The math leaves only one corporate line item large enough to absorb the new infrastructure cost: human payroll.
Wow.
The long-term strategy for enterprise survival right now relies entirely on using the AI to replace the white-collar workforce. But, and this is a big but, there is a logistical bottleneck.
Right, the training phase.
Exactly. Before an autonomous system can replace a worker, it has to be trained on the highly specific, undocumented workflows of that specific company.
Which perfectly introduces the Reuters leak regarding Meta.
Yes.
Meta has initiated a program internally called the Model Capability Initiative, or MCI, and according to the memos from the Meta Superintelligence Labs, they are deploying deep tracking telemetry software on their U.S. employees' workstations.
And we should clarify, this goes far beyond standard productivity monitoring.
Oh, absolutely. This isn't just checking if your mouse jiggled so you look active on Slack. They are capturing 100% of mouse movements, active window states, keyboard shortcuts, and they're taking continuous snapshots of the screen's content.
A total digital surveillance net.
Yes. And the stated purpose in the memo isn't performance review. It is explicitly to capture AI training data sets. They are digitally cloning the micro-behaviors of their employees to train agents that can eventually navigate those proprietary internal systems autonomously.
Because when corporations are tracking every single employee keystroke and feeding proprietary workflows directly into LLMs, securing your network is no longer optional. ARIA provides the zero-trust AI security layer that ensures your enterprise data and internal processes never leak into public models.
It's just wild to think about the mechanics of that telemetry.
Mm.
You are sitting there doing your daily tasks, and the exact coordinates of your cursor are being fed into a neural network designed to make your specific role obsolete.
It is an active workforce replacement cycle. And the Boston Globe piece today gives us the first really reliable macroeconomic modeling of what this telemetry is actually going to achieve.
Yeah, let's get into those numbers.
They highlighted a new study from Tufts University, which is based on the American AI Jobs Risk Index. It provides a highly analytical, empathetic, but numbers-driven look at the immediate future of the knowledge worker.
So what are the actual projections?
The Tufts study predicts that in the state of Massachusetts alone, over the next 5 years, 260,000 workers will be displaced by these newly trained autonomous systems.
260,000 in one state.
Yes. And the economic cost of that displacement is projected at $25.6 billion in lost wages.
Well, let's just pause on that exact figure for you, the listener, because the symmetry here is critical to understanding the modern economy. In our first segment, we noted that Amazon is spending exactly $25 billion to spin up AI server capacity.
Right.
And here, in just one single U.S. state, workers are projected to lose $25.6 billion in wages. It is practically a one-to-one transfer.
It really is.
The capital is not disappearing. It is simply being reallocated from the human payroll ledger directly into the cloud compute ledger. It's like being forced to dig your own grave while your boss measures the exact angle of your shovel to build a robot that digs faster.
That is exactly what's happening. It is a massive structural reallocation of wealth. The corporation utilizes the employee to train the model, dismisses the employee to free up the capital, and then pays that capital to the cloud provider to rent the AI.
But there is a twist here, isn't there?
A huge, cynical twist. There is a massive strategic flaw in this corporate playbook. Big tech companies, the Microsofts, the Amazons, the Metas, they are banking on selling these expensive proprietary agents to enterprises to replace those workers.
Right.
But they are entirely underestimating the speed of the open source community. They're about to be undercut by their own ecosystem.
The open source squeeze. This is where it gets really interesting. The open source market is fundamentally destroying the pricing power of the big foundational labs. Let's look at Moonshot AI. They just released a new open source model called Kimi K2.6. And according to the benchmark testing in our sources, this totally free model is actively beating top-tier proprietary models like GPT 5.4 and Claude Opus 4.6 in reasoning and coding.
The performance is impressive, but honestly, the architecture of K2.6 is the actual threat here.
Yeah.
It utilizes a framework called agent swarms.
Agent swarms.
Yeah, so instead of using one massive, expensive AI model to solve a problem step by step, K2.6 uses a manager agent that can spin up 300 parallel sub-agents simultaneously.
But wait, how does that actually lower the cost, though? If you're running 300 agents instead of one, shouldn't that require way more compute?
You'd think so, but no. It's all about specialization and efficiency. A massive proprietary model requires immense compute just to load into memory, regardless of what the task is. But a swarm uses 300 tiny, highly specialized open source models. One agent just searches a database, another just formats a timestamp, another just checks for syntax errors.
Right.
Because they process these microtasks in parallel and are incredibly lightweight, the overall inference cost is a microscopic fraction of what an enterprise vendor would charge for the exact same workflow.
Which brings us to a massive collision course for traditional enterprise software companies. I mean, look at Adobe. They just held their major summit, and they launched CX Enterprise.
Right.
It's this incredibly glossy, complex platform designed to help businesses orchestrate marketing agents and customer interactions.
Which forces us to ask a very pragmatic question regarding Adobe's whole business model. They want to charge enterprise clients a premium, locked-in subscription fee to manage a handful of proprietary marketing agents.
Yeah.
But an in-house IT director can now download K2.6 entirely for free, load it onto one of those unified memory Apple Mac Studios we talked about earlier.
The ones that are completely backordered.
Exactly. And they can autonomously run a swarm of 300 open source agents for absolute pennies on the dollar. How does an expensive legacy enterprise platform survive that?
It probably doesn't. And that summarizes the absolute squeeze perfectly. Middle management and white-collar workers are being squeezed out by expensive proprietary AI. But the enterprise software companies selling that AI are simultaneously being squeezed out by highly efficient open-source swarms.
It feels like a race to the bottom of the cost curve, where absolutely nobody in the supply chain is safe.
The entire ecosystem is just commoditizing itself.
Exactly. The foundational labs are burning tens of billions on infrastructure. The hardware companies are retreating to the safety of physical margins. The corporations are actively mining their employees for workflow data. And the open source community is just giving away the resulting technology for free.
So what does this all mean for you, listening to this right now? Today's mission was to look past the utopian AI marketing and examine the genuine cost of autonomy.
And we covered a lot of ground.
We did. We looked at the underlying mechanics. From the reality of 5 gigawatts of raw power and $25 billion compute investments at Amazon, to the unified memory architecture allowing Apple to capitalize on local AI hardware. We examined the highly invasive telemetry Meta is using to capture employee workflows and that devastating reality of $25.6 billion in lost local wages in just one state. The push for autonomous agents is not just a software evolution. It is fundamentally a massive structural wealth transfer from human labor to server farms.
And as we conclude this deep dive, I want to leave you with a chilling macroeconomic paradox. It's an issue that none of the corporate memos or financial filings we reviewed today even attempt to address.
Let's hear it.
If corporations successfully track every keystroke, if they fire their workers to offset those massive compute costs, and if they rely on swarms of 300 open source sub-agents to do the marketing and run their operations, without human wages, who's actually left in the economy with the money to buy the products these hyper-efficient AIs are selling?
Wow, that is the consumption paradox sitting right at the center of the agentic shift. Something to really mull over. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the narratives, keep looking past the hype, and always focus on the numbers. We'll see you next time.
That concludes our forensic briefing for April 21st. The strategic signal for today is the cost of autonomy. The tech industry is caught in a brutal financial paradox. Building and running AI agents is so expensive that GitHub has to pause signups, and Amazon has to drop $25 billion just to keep Anthropic's servers running. To pay for this massive infrastructure, corporations are aggressively trying to eliminate human payroll. When a company like Meta actively records its own employees' mouse clicks to train their digital replacements, the corporate social contract is officially dead. If you want to own your infrastructure instead of being managed out by an algorithm, you need the right stack. Head over to jamgamind.com/toolkit for my AI Executive Toolkit. We have audited the entire market to bring you a forensic vetted list of enterprise-grade AI solutions that actually execute. And as a special bonus for the AI Unraveled community, I have exclusive discount codes for Google Workspace and my personal pro apps. Just send an email to etienne_newman@jamgamind.com, and we will send them your way today. This episode was made possible by Aaria and Jamgamind. Hit subscribe on Apple Podcasts to enjoy this briefing completely ads-free. I am Anna. Stay sharp and keep unraveling the future.
And before you go, if your company is building the tools that power the workflows we talked about today, I'd love to showcase them to this audience. We don't just run ads, we build technical simulations that prove your value. Let's build something together. Visit jamgamind.com/partners to get started. Until next time, keep building.